VeeFam, welcome back to another episode of VeeFam Sessions. My name is Mr. Messer, but you can call me Rob, and I'm so pumped to be joined today by, oh boy, entrepreneur, business consultant, world traveler, Spaces host, Stoic philosopher, all the above, but also a VeeFriends OG, Mr. Brendan Hogle, aka Boggles, the Stoic. Brendan, thanks so much for being here. How are you today?
Oh, Rob, I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on here. I'm excited to have our conversation today.
Yeah, so excited. It's been a long time coming. And I appreciate your patience with sitting down and there's so many ways to go. And one of my favorite things about doing this show is to really peel back the layers, like VeeFriends surface level, but peel back the layers on the life of these people, beyond the PFP or beyond just how we see them as a V friend. So
Mhm.
with that said, if you don't mind, can we take a I like to take a quick 55-second step back, cliff notes on who Brendan is before any of this VeeFriends or Web3 stuff.
Oh, absolutely. So I am from Jacksonville, Florida, originally. I was born and raised there in Jacksonville, and then did my university years in Gainesville. I went to the University of Florida. Did 5 years there. Went for the extra lap just in case. And after that, I went back home to Jacksonville and started working at the PGA Tour. I worked there for 5 years in accounting first, and then as a financial analyst. And then one day just decided I got to get out of here. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm not staying here. So I quit my job and didn't really have a plan. And people started approaching me and saying, "Hey, can my background was in accounting. It was around tax season. So people were like, "Hey, can you help me with my books? Can you help me with my business? I've got this side hustle I'm trying to figure out. Can you help me?" I had gotten my MBA while I was working at the PGA Tour. So I started a consulting company that led to me doing that. Around the same time, I read The 4 Hour Work Week and was kind of reading this idea that Tim Ferriss has, which if you can find a way to get paid in US dollars, but live in a country where the dollar goes very far, then you can live a very comfortable life. And I was like, that's for me. So once I kind of secured clients to support my lifestyle abroad, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, we decided to pack up everything and leave the country. Um, and that's where our journey started. We went through Colombia and then popped over to Europe, spent all of COVID in Europe, and then recently kind of made our way back here to this side of the pond and are living in Panama now.
Amazing. And I think I read you visited 20 countries. Is that number still accurate or is it more?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit more now. We just went on a trip recently and went to three more. So I think it's somewhere close approaching 30. But yeah, so we've done a lot. We've moved around a lot. It was tough because as tourists, because we go on tourist visas, we don't get residencies or anything like that. So every 3 months we had to move to a new country.
Mm, interesting. And all the while you're running businesses from your laptops.
Yeah, living the digital nomad life. I had the consulting business. While we were traveling, I started to learn how to build websites, and I created a drop shipping site, sold that, created another one. And then meanwhile, my wife is an intuitive eating counselor and is working, has her company that she does that. And so yeah, we're moving and grooving, that's for sure.
You guys are just textbook entrepreneurs. It's amazing that you get to live that. And I remember 4 Hour Work Week, like millions and millions of people. I read that too, and it hit people different. So it's amazing to see you guys execute on that.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously, I can only guess that that was he Tim left an impression on the whole stoicism part of your life too. Now, where does that fit in? Because you have a podcast, you do spaces on stoicism. Tell us about your journey there and then how Stoica came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I love telling this story. So I did find it out on the Tim Ferriss podcast. He was interviewing Ryan Holiday, who's kind of the main Stoic writer right now. But he was doing his book tour, and so I picked up Ryan Holiday's book, "The Obstacle Is the Way," And I read that, and it spoke to me in a way like, a lot of times I say that the people are Stoics without even realizing it. Like a lot of the ideals are timeless. So I was like, this sounds a lot like me. Like this is something that I can get behind. And for the first probably like 2 years, I was a very, what I call like passive Stoic. I really just listened to the Daily Stoic podcast, which is Ryan Holiday. If you can tell, there's a theme here. I was listening to a lot of podcasts at this time in my life, but yeah, so I was listening to the Daily Stoic podcast for a few years, just kind of absorbing the content on my drives and stuff, but I wasn't really applying it in my life. It wasn't until I left my job and started kind of that entrepreneur journey that life was a bit more stressful. There was a bit more responsibility on my shoulders, and I honestly just wasn't doing very well with it. It was difficult, and I needed something to kind of lean on. And that's when I really started to be like, really dig into the Stoicism side of things, picked up meditation, started reading the ancient texts. And that's when I really started being more proactive, I guess, about applying the teachings in my life. And it was transformative for me. It really eased my mind, brought more peace and tranquility to my life. But the real big moment for me, and kind of what led to deciding that this is something I wanted to do as a career, was, one of the things that Stoicism teaches us is that the reminder that we will die, like death is coming, and not only for us, but for our loved ones as well. So to cherish the moments that we have with them. So I was doing little exercises. I'm an only child. My mom and I were kind of, and my parents are divorced, so it was just my mom and I for most of my life. And I practiced thinking about the day that she would die and kind of becoming more comfortable with that reality. Well, it happened much sooner than I would expect. She died at the beginning of 2023. And that was one of the worst experiences of my life. But it was my study and practice of Stoicism that allowed me to kind of pick myself up and get through that difficulty. And that's when I was like, this is something that other people need. This is the way to get through the challenging times of life. I started doing spaces because I was reading the Daily Stoic every day and trying to get my wife to discuss it with me. And she's like, can you just find some friends on Twitter to do this? So I did. And we started having spaces.
Yeah. That's sensible advice from her.
Yeah. No, very smart, very wise. It worked out. And through the spaces, I met my now business partner, Benny and Bryce. And the three of us have started Via Stoica with the goal of spreading the tools and teachings of Stoicism to as many people as possible.
That's so amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Before we double click into some of that stuff, just to take a step back, because Stoicism, definitely, Ryan Holiday, people like Tim Ferriss, Ryan Holiday definitely put it and injected that term into the mainstream where people are hearing it for the first time. But I know, like many, it's just kind of something that people see but don't really maybe fully understand. So to give the audience a better grasp, like, what does it mean to practice Stoicism or to be a Stoic? I know we just heard how it helped you, but from generally speaking, like what does that even mean?
So Stoicism is a 2,000-year-old ancient philosophy that has been used by leaders throughout every civilization up until today. And really what the core of Stoicism is we want to focus on the things that we can control and kind of ignore the things that we can't control. Most of the times, most of the things that cause anxiety in our life or stressors in our life are simply things that we cannot control. The Stoics say that we really only have control over our thoughts, our actions, and our responses to the kind of world around us. So if we're only focusing on those three things, our thoughts, our actions, and how we respond, life gets a lot simpler. Life gets a lot easier. We can try and control people and push people to do what we want to do, but as a practicing Stoic, that's not possible. And to try and do that and pursue that is a bit of a fool's errand. So it's just a way of really, I like to say it like kind of helps you focus. It narrows the field of vision on where you should be putting your time and energy. And that's another thing that I'm really big on is time. Like I was kind of practicing that minimalism thing when I was discovering Stoicism, and it really spoke to me, this idea of like we have so few moments on this earth that we should really be spending them in the best ways that we can and trying to be in the most impactful ways we can. And Stoicism helps me to kind of shed the barnacles off the boat of these things are not important. These things are not things that I should be spending time and energy on when I could be doing these other things. And that's really what Stoicism has done for me. And I think is the point of Stoicism, is to try and bring that clarity to your life.
Mm, I love that. It's funny you say that at the time. I would just last night I was in my Instagram feed. It was someone who does professional organizing for a living, and I forget I don't want to misquote the actual number, but the amount of hours we waste every week looking for stuff. Um, which ties in the whole minimalism thing, just like cut down on everything. Like
Yeah.
I'm looking for things all the time. I'm misplacing things. So that's just a real, micro version of what we're talking about in the meta of, you know, choosing wisely what you're focusing on, spending your time. Um, this is something that's been on my radar for a while, and I'm so like one of the hidden reasons that I'm really wanted to jam with you is like to learn more about it, and I think to help push me towards like getting into a space or actually finally reading one of the books.
Mhm.
So because like even from the whole like mom thing, I have a single mom too, and moms can be a lot, but in the back of my head all the time, I'm like, she's only on this earth for so long. Like
Mhm.
she's now in her 70s. Um, so it's something I should have that internal struggle with every day. So that's thinking without calling myself a stoic. I'm like, I really need to call her. I really need to have her here because that's a controllable, right? I can't
Mhm.
control when she, leaves us, but I can control that. So I feel like I have a lot of the bullet points, but just putting it into practice so it's a muscle memory. I
Mhm.
think that's why you got to dive in every day. Um, am I on the right track?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the awareness of like that's Stoicism starts in awareness. That's kind of the first step. So just the awareness that you're like, what, this is something I'm interested in. This is something I want to pursue. That's you're already on the path,
Mhm.
and it is, but it is that daily practice, and I think that's why Ryan Holiday's Daily Stoic has done so well, is because it's just little nuggets every single day that kind of add up. Like I said, it took me almost 2 years to really start to apply these things, and I was just listening. So like I really do think it is something that the sooner you start, the better, because it is it's little nuggets that eventually build into big boulders.
Just a few minutes ago, you rattled off, a consulting business, drop shipping businesses, and starting uh, obviously Stoica. Do you think without practicing this, do you think you can manage so many moving plates so well without just kind of being centered with this? Do you think it's
Absolutely not. No, I get over. I mean, there was actually a period in the beginning, like I said, when I was starting to build my first company, that I really was not doing well, and it actually kind of folds into my VeeFriends story. So maybe we'll get into that later. But this idea, like I was incredibly overwhelmed with just one company and trying to
mm,
manage one. And now, fast forward 5, 7 years later, and I'm easily juggling four. So things have definitely changed, and it goes back to that idea of where can I have impact? Where can I really use my time and energy efficiently? And also, as a part of Stoicism, that has really helped me personally, is I'm not one that puts myself first. I'm not one that takes care of myself first. I am a giver. I try and help people constantly, and I will put other people's needs ahead of mine all the time. And Stoicism is really big on, look, you got to take care of yourself. You got to look after yourself, because at the core of it, Stoics care about the community. Stoics care about the world at large. But we also recognize that you can't give your gifts to the world if you're operating at 50%.
yeah,
So that has been really key for me to be able to be this entrepreneur and juggle all the things I have.
wonderful. Yeah, you can't fill other people's cups when yours is empty.
Hmm.
So speaking, you have entrepreneur plate spinning. You're very ambitious. You have what sounds like amazing values and beliefs. A lot of it overlaps with how I see Gary and consume his content. So where on your timeline, when was the first time you heard the name Gary V?
Ooh, I don't know the exact year. It was definitely before I left my job. So I left that in 2017. So it was probably like 2016, 2015, somewhere in there. Um, but what happened is I left my job. I started building this consulting company, and like I said, I kind of hit a brick wall, and I was really struggling. So I found myself constantly going to Instagram to just run away from my problems. And my Instagram account at the time was heavy on the hustle culture, heavy on the business entrepreneur side of things, because that's what my interests were.
Hmm.
But I realized it was kind of stressing me out, kind of putting a lot of undue pressure on me. So I said, Instagram is supposed to be a place I go to laugh and have fun and forget the day, not stress out about it. So I literally went through and kind of purged my followers of anyone that was even remotely business related whatsoever. And it was just dog videos and funny, clips, and that was it. It was just a place for me to go and be happy. And then it wasn't until like I think Young Jeezy had an album out, and he had a song called Entrepreneur, and he's got clips of Gary talking in that song. And I'm hearing the song, and I was like, this guy sounds familiar. Who is this? And I Google it, and I was like, oh yeah, Gary V. Okay, yeah, I remember that guy. I used to follow him. Like, what's he been up to? And I started following him again, and then it was, I don't know, maybe a month or so later, where he started talking about NFTs. I was like, hey, you guys should probably look into this thing. And I said, all right, yeah, I can do that. And I started, Googling, and I had a kind of a moment where back in 2012, like right in the beginning of Bitcoin, I had a friend that told me about it because he was, doing the Silk Road stuff. And I was just like, okay, that sounds interesting, but it doesn't sound like something I need to do right now. So we'll move on. And of course, then fast forward, I see, that thing that he was telling me about at, $1 or $2 or whatever it was, is now at $6,000, $7,000. I was like, maybe I should look into this crypto thing. So I one day, started looking at Ethereum and understanding what it was. But again, like I said, I was trying to build this business. So I was like, I don't have time for this. I'm just going to buy one ETH and I'm going to let it sit there on Coinbase and we'll just see what happens. And then fast forward a few years later, and Gary's talking about NFTs. And I was like, that Ethereum. It's like, I think I have that somewhere. Well, I go and like figure out my password to Coinbase and get in there. And, now ETH is what I bought at $400, $500 is now 3,000, 4,000, something like that. And I was like, all right, I'll buy some VeeFriends. Let's do this. So that's how I got into VeeFriends. And that's the story of it is just kind of, it's all very serendipitous of how like just finding Gary, like rediscovering Gary again at the right time, having the ETH already in a wallet that I forgot about. So everything just kind of lined up.
So what pushed you? Because like you said, when you put a dollar amount on it, it's four grand. What pushed you to have the conviction to get in there? What was it, Gary? Was it the technology? Was it the what you heard about the utility of the potential utility or potential utility of the tokens? What pushed you into jumping in?
It was definitely, I mean, I would say the initial thing of me having to take a hard look at it was knowing Gary as someone who spots trends well.
Mm.
Usually, when he makes calls, you listen to what he has to say. So that was kind of the first thing that made me say, all right, let me actually do what he says and go and Google NFTs and figure out what these things are. But then just understanding, because at that point I had been kind of steeped in the marketing game. I didn't do any sort of marketing in schooling really at all. So this was, I immediately felt the immediate connection you can have with clients through NFTs. Like that made a lot of sense to me right away. And then just the way he described it as far as like, hey, I'm building Disney and this is the first sketch. This is Mickey Mouse on the napkin. And that made a lot of sense to me too. And then, to be honest, just from because like I said, my background is accounting and finance, I was sitting there going, really, this is only $400 of my money that I'm spending. So if I lose it, it's not the end of the world. And this is definitely exciting. This is definitely new technology that I want to get involved in. And I felt that the way to kind of force myself to stay up to date and stay aware of the changing technology was to have some skin in the game, was to have the buy something of value that I'm going to say, okay, now that I've got this money invested here, I'm going to pay attention to what's going on in that sector and try and keep up with it.
Yeah, that's such a great call out, and it's so true. Like, obviously, Discord was a big thing, and I just remember jumping into all of the Discords that I was interested in their projects. Obviously, I didn't uh, buy or ape into all of them, but it's just different when you're
Mhm.
actually invested. It's just another level of having a pulse on what's going on. So that makes a ton of sense. What were you in the, obviously you were tapped in, but were you into the community? Did you notice anything significant about the community? Were you hanging out in Discord? At the time, there weren't really spaces, but there was a lot of activity in the Discord. Where would you consider yourself, or how invested in the actual community? Talking to people, creating relationships, listening, learning. Where, going back to the early days, 2021. Where were you then?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that was the thing, like, because I made the purchase, I bought the VF1, and then, I kind of was like, meh, all right, that's it. I'm just going to see how this goes and wait a few years or whatever. The same approach I had when I bought the one Ethereum.
Yeah,
Um, but, then it was this idea, like, I didn't know anything about Discord prior to buying a VF1. So I got Discord and I said, okay, if I want to find out about the announcements, I need to download this thing. But then I got in there and I started to understand that what Gary was doing was bringing together people that have like shared values. And that is what I'm all about, is finding people that share the same values as me. It's interesting that Via Stoica has been the business that I'm now building, but I've always thought, once I really understood Stoicism and knew that this was like a philosophy of life that I want to enjoy for the rest of my life, I knew, I'm like, I'm going to be in business with other Stoics because I need to have people that align with me on these core values. So when I got into Discord and you're hearing people talk about kindness and you're hearing people talk about patience, and that was like, okay, this is my tribe. These are my people. This is where I need to be. And that's, now fast forwarding to today, that's what I see as the true value behind NFTs in general and VeeFriends specifically, is finding your niche, finding your tribe of like-minded people, because that's the people that you're gonna vibe with the most. That's the people that you're gonna get along with the most, and build the relationships and friendships and business partners and all the fun things that come along with that.
mm, it's so true. It's been so fun to watch. I do a lot of watching and listening, and obviously talking to people. It's so fun to see the niches that have developed in just the short time, just the 3 years. Some are more out there, like, the cards and collectibles community. Some are kind of manufactured for us, and they just, evolve right in front of our faces. And then there's smaller ones, like smaller, you know, um, business groups, or masterminds that just happen in little, Twitter threads,
Mm-hmm.
or Discord chats. So it's fascinating what the community does. One of the big, obviously, ROIs was for a V friend was a ticket to VCon. Did you attend VCon one?
Yeah, yeah, both one and two.
So tell me, we didn't have much aside from a few kind of ramp up hype videos and some speakers that were going to be there. We didn't really have much of an idea of what it was actually going to be. We just knew it was going to be cool. We knew the community was awesome. Obviously, everyone believes in Gary, his ability to run businesses. Likely, he throws a great party and conference. So, talk to me about your VCon one experience. I mean, walking in there, what were your first reactions, and like as you progressed through the weekend, how did you navigate it, and what were your takeaways, or maybe some memorable experiences?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I had done a lot of music festivals before, so that was kind of like my only experience. I hadn't really gone to business conferences or anything like that. I had only been to music festivals, so my experience with big events was
Mm,
a little different, we'll say.
yeah.
So I was kind of going in with an open mind of, look, these, like I said, again, these are like-minded people. So at the end of the day, even if the event itself is terrible and I hate every minute of it, I'm going to meet some people that I'm going to get along with. I know that for certain. So that was kind of just at minimum where I started. But through those Discord days and going through the joy and euphoria of the bull market, I obviously had made some friends. So meeting these people in real life was something I was really excited about, to kind of, see I was just, for some reason, I was very interested in being like, are these people really all this great? Because like they seem pretty wonderful on the internet, but
Yeah.
you can have a polished version of yourself on the internet. That's pretty easy to do. So I was like, are these people really all this genuine and really all going to be very kind? And then come to find out, through the weekend, yes, that is absolutely true. And in most cases, more so. So the just like, there's nothing better than like giving someone that you've been talking to for a year on the internet a big hug. Like that's just the greatest. And that is really what VCon is to me, is just a big hug. And I think that this idea that I think got more solidified last year of this family reunion thing is really the what keeps me coming back. It's the speakers are great and the events are great and the concerts are great and all that stuff, but you can do that stuff anywhere. But the feeling you get from being around people that you truly, not only align with, but care about, love, is unmatched.
I love that. So wonderfully articulated, and I shared the same exact sentiment. And you said it better than I ever could. Uh, so good, so good. And yeah, this idea of the family reunion, and Gary called it out perfectly a couple years ago. He said, year 3 was going to be like, not people aren't going to skip a beat. We're going to just jump right into events and who's having lunch with who, and this party and this get together. Like it's just going to be fast forward. Like so happy to see you after not seeing you since last family reunion.
Yeah.
Um, we're in a place now. We're like 40-ish days away, and there's a lot of people that have come into the community for the first time, going to VCon for the first time. And like many other, maybe not so many music festivals. Well, music festivals, you see the lineup and you're like, I want to see this person. This person's on this stage. This person's on Friday night on this side stage. So you have an idea of what you want. Business conferences, like you have something, maybe you're working on, uprooting your marketing or rebranding. So you have kind of some a to-do list of things you want to accomplish, people you want to meet. VCon's a little bit different because there's so many other moving components. I'm curious for you in maybe year 1 or 2, with your businesses and obviously your evolving passions. Did you have something like a goal when you were walking into the conference, or were you just kind of open-minded, like I'm just gonna go and be myself and meet these great people and hang? Out of curiosity for you, that has so much going on.
Yeah, no, for me, I mean, I am a planner. So the first year, I pretty much planned out my schedule the same way I would do at a music festival. I'm like, I'm going to see these bands and I'm going to go over here. I mean, like, I kind of planned everything, all the speakers I was going to see and everything like that. And then of course, getting there, as you're walking around, you bump into someone, you end up talking to them for an hour about, life. And so that plan was thrown out the window rather quickly. And so when I went in the second year, and this was really helpful for me. So for anyone going their first year, I just picked one speaker a day and was like, okay, I want to see this person. And then I also had like if I have extra time person. So like I usually had 2 per day where I was like, I have to see this one. And this is kind of my secondary person. And then after that, I'm just going to let it go. And I'm going to see, if I bump into someone in the hallway and they're headed to this speaker, I'm just going to go with them. So I was very much like very open to just like going with it. And strangely enough, the second year is when I, went into places that I wouldn't have heard anyone. Charity Water was the one that I remember the most from last year. I saw GT going in there and he's like, hey, I'm going this way. And I was like, all right, I'll go that way. And it ended up being my favorite speaker of the entire VCon experience. And I wouldn't have been there if I didn't just have this no plan. So that's like been the thing that worked out for me the best, was just kind of, only picking 1 or 2 per day. And then for year 3, I feel like with year 2, I kind of went too far in the like no planning phase of it because I didn't really connect with people like I wanted to. I kept trying to meet up with people for lunch or dinner, but like it just didn't work out. And so I missed out some opportunities there. So this time I'm going to try and go in more with some plans of hey, like with this specific person, like let's make sure we get coffee at least, or let's
Yeah,
make sure we just sit down on a bench for an hour. Like I want to spend time with people and really tap in with people more. So that's the kind of tweak to my plan this year, I guess.
I love that. Flexible planning.
Yeah, that's I mean, and that to me is like the real key to life is have a plan, have something in your mind, at least a direction that you're heading towards, but be prepared to shift and go down a little another, side quest for a little bit and pop over here for something like the fun is in the flexibility. So that is really what I learned the second year, and I guess what I'm trying to double down on in the third.
That's wonderful, great advice. Through, well, going back, you minted it. Am I remembering this correctly? A Mojo mouse? Is that what you?
Wow, yes, I did.
All
I
right,
don't know how you
Mojo
knew that,
mouse.
but that's impressive.
Um, Obviously you're rocking the Stoic slime. Totally aligns with you.
Yes.
Um, so that I am I being presumptuous when I say that's like your go-to character, the Stoic slime?
Yeah, definitely. Now, I mean, now that I'm fully marinated in it, absolutely. The Mojo Mouse was really more of like a well, it was a play because I do just like the simplicity of it and the fact that it is very symmetrical. I like symmetrical things, so the drawing itself is actually pretty symmetrical. But it was also kind of I guess, a strategy. Gary kept describing it as his Disney. So I said, okay, Mickey Mouse, Mojo Mouse, here we are.
Uh,
And he had also shared at that point that the black cat and the empathy elephant were going to be big characters. And I was like, okay, mice and elephants, they do their thing. And mice and cats, like, all right, like that could be a strong secondary character. Because I wasn't expecting to get, the patient panda or the black cat or anything like that. I knew those were going to go early. And I was waiting towards the bottom of the as the auction was going down. So that was the play for me with the Mojo Mouse and I wanted number one. That was the other thing too. So I have Mojo Mouse number one, and that
oh,
was
cool.
just goes back to like I did trade Pokemon cards back in the day. That was kind of the only collectible I've ever been really involved in, really intensely. It was Pokemon, and first editions were always like the thing. So I was like, well, this NFT is the first edition, but I want the number one of the first edition. So I'm going to do, and that's how Mojo Mouse happened. But yeah, Stoic Slime is definitely more representative of my values and things like that.
That's super insightful. And when you talk about the elephant mouse, just Gary's all about the contradictions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, cat mouse. I really like that. I've never thought about that or heard about that. Super insightful, and it makes a ton of sense. Mojo mouse. Um, you just mentioned Pokemon. Where have you been as far as the VeeFriends collectibles? Obviously, everyone that's it started with everyone that had a minted a VF2, got a free box of CNC, compete and collect. Now it's referred to as just the VeeFriends TCG. Over the last year, probably since last VCon, this time a year ago in 2023, the cards have exploded. The community, the underlying products, pins, stickers, uh, trading cards. Where have you been on that? Has it been on your radar? Have you started collecting, or have you not really? Have you watched? Where are you with the whole collectible side of VeeFriends?
Yeah, I kind of have a weird relationship with it because there is that kind of nostalgia. So I got some. I think I got 4 boxes. I minted 4 VF2s, so I got 4 boxes. Opened all the boxes because I can't wait or hold on to things.
Yeah.
That's not my style at all. Um, so I really enjoyed it, but I haven't gotten really into the whole thing, the collecting. Like I'm not going after a bunch of Stoic slime cards. I kind of am. Like I'm trying to build, I think, a set, but I also keep. What's that? Sorry about that.
All good.
Um, so Yeah, back to the cards. So I don't have like I'm not really super into it. I think it's super interesting. I love going on Fanatics and watching the streams and stuff, but I'm not really like hot on the collectibles so much because I'm so into the digital. Like I keep thinking to myself, why spend money on cards when I can just go buy another VF2? Like
Mm,
I want digital stuff. I want to be light. I don't want to have things. Um, so that is kind of where I am going back and forth. So I'm actually like planning on unloading a lot of stuff at VCon. I'm just gonna because I can't ship stuff from Panama. It's hard to send people stuff from here. So while at VCon, I'm gonna probably get rid of a decent amount of cards. And but the pens, on the other hand, when they came out with the pens, that was something that piqued my interest a little more because I've always collected pens as a child. Actually going to Disney World and buying the pens there as a
yeah.
kid. My wife and I, we buy pins as we travel around. So we have little pins from every country we've been to. And so pins have always been something that I gravitate towards. So when those first ones came out, I was like, again, first edition, I want these for sure. I got a full set of those and that made me happy. But as the pins have gone on, like the Road to VCon ones, I don't know. I just had I kind of lost interest. It's just something that I think goes back to that idea of just trying to get away from physical goods more into the digital goods, and that's just not for me at this moment. But I do have the first pins, and I did buy a box of the Halloween pins or two boxes of the Halloween pins, so I've got some of those too. But it's not
Uh,
something that I'm actively kind of chasing. It's just more of a fun little hobby.
I totally get that, and I mean I live that. One day I want to collect all of the bold as fuck bats and the Gary B stuff, and I want the whole rainbow. And the other day I'm like, they're just cards. Like let's just sell
Hmm.
them.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I have my own internal struggles with that.
Yeah. It's
But
tough, but that's this idea, right? I'm trying to, I think, live the Web3 life. Like I'm trying to be like, look, if I'm trying to go digital, I'm trying to be, then let's live it.
yeah, well, I can right off the bat right now, I could think about 2 to 5 people that are probably be in your DMs looking for a deal to meet up at VCon um,
Yeah.
to get a wholesale
DM
price.
away. They're always open, my friends.
um, so fun. So we've you talked about meeting people and in the community. Talked about just the amazing experiences of taking that IRL. We have a great community. The overarching theme of this podcast is the community. It's a word that gets thrown around all the time, but I always like to ask people, like, what does that word even mean to you? What does the word community mean?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, to me, I go back to that idea of shared values that a community is people that not necessarily share your exact outlook on life because of course we all have different backgrounds and biases and all sorts of things, so we may not necessarily see everything exactly eye to eye, but the core of it, like what is most important to us, is usually aligned. That's where I feel like community is built and fostered the best way. um, with the Be Stoic community is something that I started building by accident, right? I just kind of fired up spaces one day and then realized that people enjoyed what was being said. So I built this community. And that's what I've tried to keep doubling down on in the community is look, these are the values we share. Yeah, we may not agree on everything in the world, but that doesn't matter because we're all at the end of the day human beings just trying to live our lives, trying to care for ourselves and our families, and we can share that. We all align basically on 90% of things. It's just the 10% that people seem to overly focus on. So community to me is just where you have shared values with other people. And and then I think that's important too in community is a place where you can feel vulnerable, because I think vulnerability is something that is really undervalued. But once you find a place where you can open up and share and be honest with people, that is another thing that is going to be that adhesive to hold the community together. I really think that's the core of it, is people just being honest with each other and being authentic.
That's amazing. So true and so wonderfully said. You're obviously you're plugged into Web3. You follow that. You've been here through all the markets that we've had so far. Um, you know, the scoreboard, when floor price, a lot of people, that's all they pay attention to. Some people don't look at it at all. From, you know, from a scoreboard standpoint, VeeFriends 36 months ago was worth a lot more. VeeFriends NFTs, Series 1, were worth a lot more than they are today. I mean, it's on June 28th, or we'll say a couple days ago, last time I looked, June 26th, 2024, you could get one for about $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think it is about the project or the community that still has people with just filled with so much conviction about being here, investing their time, their resources into this project when the scoreboard says that's, we've gone down? As someone that's so plugged into Web3, what do you think that is?
Yeah, it's something. It's interesting you ask because it's something I was kind of thinking about the other day as I was checking the floor price to see if I should buy some more. And it's hard because at the end of the day, right? The you can't deny that the price that people are willing to pay is indicative of something, right? So and right now, I think given just pure dollar value, I think we are now under the mint price of
Mm,
VF1s, and but I think that's more indicative of the actual just market in general, NFTs being dead allegedly, and all of these things, which has some truth and value to it. I do think that the insanity that happened in the last bull run um, is the reason why you have such a correction, right? Like it's a pendulum at the end of the day.
yeah,
So, but what keeps people here or keeps people coming back, I think, is the thing that we've been talking about the whole time, which is the community. And I do think that there is conviction in what Gary's doing. At least for me personally, I'm not saying there's not other builders in Web3, because there obviously is people who, when I say builders, I mean proven successful entrepreneurs prior to entering Web3. I'm not saying the people that have gotten to Web3 and been successful, but Gary's been there. He's been in the trenches. He's built and lost multiple companies. And that's what it takes to build something of real, true value. And so that is what I believe in. I believe that he is an operator at the end of the day. And I know the value of a good operator. So to me, if you're going to bet on something in Web3, I'm going to bet on the most seasoned guy there. And that to me is Gary. Now, maybe he's not going to be, the number one NFT project, because culture has a say in some things as well. And obviously, Bored Apes kind of capitalized on that in the most way in the initial bull run. But then you see where they're at now, and I see a lot of people kind of complaining about the direction they're heading in and things like that. But I think as far as like those kind of the naysayers, whether you're talking about Bored Apes or VeeFriends or any other project, like there's going to be that. And that's the part of, and that's where, again, going back to community, when you're in a community, everyone's not going to agree.
mm,
Everyone's not going to always get along, and everyone's not going to see eye to eye. And that's the beautiful part of a community. If we were all in this echo chamber of just telling ourselves how amazing everything is, that wouldn't be very fun. That would be very inauthentic. So I think that the floor price or however you want to judge it is one way to do it, but it's going to happen. There's going to be ups and downs and ebbs and flows with new technology. But at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to who's leading the ship. And I have faith in Gary's business abilities. And that's at the end of the day what this is. It's a business. Obviously, it operates a little different than a more traditional business. But it's still, at the end of the day, you got to keep revenues coming in, and you got to keep interest up. So, and I think Gary's very good at doing that. But for
yeah,
me, it was interesting, like, because I have friends, who were following along during the NFT craze, thinking I'm an insane person for like even buying these silly things. But when I was getting offers on the Mojo Mouse for $60,000, they're like, okay, you sell that now, right? And I was like, no. And now, in retrospect, I wish I just sold everything else at that point.
mm,
I still like my VeeFriend. I still like my Mojo Mouse. I still want to hold on to it, but I held on to a bunch of other NFTs that now aren't as great. So it's all lessons, though. At the end of the day, everything is lessons. So I learned a lesson in the last bull run, and the goal now is just to not make those mistakes in the future.
right.
So if I can do that, That's a W for me.
Bingo. Bingo. Yeah, I've just been really we so many people. It's hard for people to let go of the notion that VeeFriends is an NFT project because that was everyone's introduction to VeeFriends. That was the first thing that could make you a VeeFriend and join this community was that NFT. But if you the way I've shifted my mindset is just thinking of it as like just another asset that you could buy under the VeeFriends umbrella, like your Halloween pin box, right? If you like you have let go, I imagine that you haven't checked eBay listings for what a Halloween pin box is going for. Um, so if you just think of that, like they're building an IP, they're building a brand, and if you just think of it as just another thing under the umbrella rather than that being the thing, being VeeFriends, I think it's just helped me think about it much differently. Um,
Oh yeah,
and
that's a really
people
good point. I really like that.
and
Just to
people
kind of
just because it was the thing, because that's the attachment. Obviously people are down on it because back from very early, not right out of the gate, because that's all they were an NFT. But they changed, Andy and the whole team changed their messaging very early, 2021. Like, we are not an NFT project, we are an IP. We're building an IP. We are a brand.
yeah.
And I think with all the collaborations, with everything that they're executing on, that they're building that. So, and with all the hype, people didn't listen to Gary many people didn't listen to Gary shouting in his microphone like this is a 55-year thing.
Hmm.
Here we are 3 years out, 3 years, a little blip
Hmm.
on this 55-year timeline, and here we are. So that's how I think about it. But I agree with everything that you said about Gary as an operator and the Gary tree of people that are working on this thing. So
Yeah, I also think it's something that people forget about when it comes to an NFT project. When it comes to VeeFriends specifically, is like this is like I said, Barry keeps relating it back to Disney. Like this is an IP built for children. At the end
mm,
of the day, now it's a bunch of mid 30-year-old men now, but the idea is to bring a bunch of kids in, and I think that often gets forgotten in the NFT world.
yep,
And while I think that that's exactly what they're doing with the cards and the cartoons and the Meet Me in the Middle book, they're appealing to that audience, and that's the point. That's what Gary's always talked about doing, is having the patient panda on the kid's backpack and that sort of stuff. But you don't have a lot of 5, 6, 7, and 8 year olds firing up MetaMask and going to OpenSea to buy some VeeFriends. That's just not
right,
what they're doing. They're buying cards, they're buying pins, they're buying little T-shirts, and that's where you can't factor that into the floor price. The joy that kids have wearing a shirt with their favorite character on it is not factored into the floor price. But that is
great
what the
call out.
IP is building, and that is why this is a 55-year project and not a 3-year project. You're not going to get an ROI on kids having fun. That's the fun is the ROI. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to reflect in your MetaMask or whatever wallet of choice.
Great call out. Yeah, I mean, we could live in a world, like, I'm thinking about, like Cabbage Patch dolls. Everybody knows Cabbage Patch dolls. They were coveted. They were huge. Like, we could live in a world where the most coveted thing and that people know about VeeFriends or seek out from VeeFriends is like a patient pig doll, like
Mhm.
that's coveted, like a Cabbage Patch doll, and becomes a
Yeah.
collectible. And who knows? We just don't know when it comes to building that IP through the eyes of kids. And I think it's going to also ultimately go the other angle. Speaking of contradictions, and ponder it from all angles, however we wanna think about it, with aiming at parents too.
Hmm.
Um, the world needs all of these characters and traits, um, and that's another reason I'm here, and I'm a buyer.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what a great conversation. I love how this evolves. Um, circling back before we kind of start to wrap up here, I want to give you a space to to going back to the Stoicism and via Stoica, how could people, if what you've said has have piqued people's interest, like myself, how, and I know that this is going to live forever, but in June 2024, how can we get plugged into what you're doing on Spaces or the pod or wherever?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, as of right now, and of course, like you said, this will probably look different in 6 months, but because we are moving rapidly. But we have spaces on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So that is how you can find us there. The schedule can be found at Stoic B on Twitter, or the Be Stoic community if you want to check that out on X. Um, we also have a podcast called the Street Stoics Podcast, and we put a new episode out every Tuesday. And then as far as getting tapped into all the things we're doing is to go directly to viastoica.com and sign up for our newsletter. Right now we've just, because like I said, it was three of us that kind of came together to form this company. So we're very much like we have our like pieces all over the place, and that's what we're focusing on this year, is kind of filing everything under Via Stoica, that being the big umbrella, that being the big tent that everybody comes to. So to stay up to date with all the things we have going on inside and outside of X is to join our newsletter. And we send that out once a month. And it's really just a way to kind of give people a moment to pause. We call the newsletter the pause. And that is what Stoicism really teaches is, look, we receive things from the outside world. Someone says something to us, someone gives us a dirty look, whatever. We can react right away. But what Stoics teach us to do is pause and really examine, how do we want to respond here? Because I don't control this other person, but I control my response. And my response is going to have impact and dictate how the rest of the kind of interaction goes. So taking a pause and a moment to reflect is always important, no matter the situation. So that's what we try and do with our newsletter, with our monthly newsletter, and ultimately with our spaces, is give people that moment, that hour and a half, 3 times a week to sit in, reflect on the topic that we're talking about, and see how it applies in their life. And if you want to take it a step further, we also offer coaching. So there is 3 of us, and I love the fact that we are 3 of us, but we are 3 very different people in different phases of our life right now. So we do have a coach that can most likely match with what you've got going on. And so Stoic coaching is always a way to go. It's really great. It's kind of an in between, like it's not quite therapy, right? We're definitely not therapists by any means, but it's more peer to peer kind of support. And we've only been doing it for a few months now, but we've seen a lot of wonderful stories and a lot of great transformations from people who were struggling 6 months ago and now are living much more tranquil lives.
That's wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. So cool. And I'm going to say this out loud as a reminder. I want to run an idea potentially by you for VCon. So we'll chat about that after. But quick couple of things before we head into our last segment here. In the community, maybe in your small, maybe it's in via Stoica world or in VeeFriends land, a lot of people, there's so much kindness running through, but the veins of what we have going on here, a lot of it ends up on Twitter. Most of it happens behind the scenes. I always like to ask, is there anyone that you want to blow the whistle on in a good way and give roses to, maybe to shine a light on an act of kindness or generosity that you've noticed them perform within the VFam here?
Oh, absolutely. So it actually goes back to the very beginning, the good old days as they were. Dave Hugh, so Max the Miata, if you know who that is. He had something at the very beginning. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was one of those things where like he was running a little giveaway. He had made a piece of art and he was giving it away. So it was like kind of a like retweet thing. I don't remember exactly what you had to do to win it. But then he said, okay, later I'm going to go, I can't think he went live or did something. He had a video recording where he was like, I'm going to announce the winner on this video, on this live. And we join in, and this is probably the first time I was like in a group of VeeFriends, not on Discord, right? So you had the Clubhouse days and you had Discord, but like this was the first time that it was more live. And he's like, okay, I'm going to pick the winner. And just the way he was talking, I was like, I think he's going to give it to everyone. like, I don't think he's just going to give one. I think he's going to give them all. And then he kind of gives this whole spiel, and he's like, oh, the announcement is that I'm giving this NFT to everyone. Like, everyone gets it. It's not one winner, it's everyone. So he
Awesome.
made multiple versions of it. But that was, to me, kind of maybe the turning point when this went from when I was looking at NFTs as basically just an investment to like, oh, this is a community. This is a group of people that I now want to tap into, because this guy who I didn't know anything about him now, and now Dave and I are great friends and talk all the time. But I just think he's such a kind person. He's such a giving person. He's always trying to provide guidance to people, to kind of share his, experience, so that other people don't maybe make the same mistakes he did, or stumble in the same ways that he did. So I just think he's a really caring, loving person. And that, to me, is what like the VeeFriends community represents.
I love that. Um, Another one of my signature questions I love to ask: what character do you, Brendan, need to spend more time with?
Well, that really is fantastic. I love that one. Hmm. There's a lot. There's a lot.
You're practicing what you preach with the pause.
Yeah. I would say that, because I'm feeling this now, and it's funny that this meet in the middle is coming out, or is out now, or because I'm an Eagle Scout, so Eagles have always been something that, and my consulting company is Eagle Rock Consulting. So I always loved the Eager Eagle, but I also gravitate towards that like eagerness to get things done right away, and I've been really trying to lean into patience, and it's been going better. But every time I start a new company, that eagerness, that drive to just work 200 hours a day comes back to me, and I
Mhm.
want to just take this thing and run until it's exactly the way I want it to be. But sitting back and kind of having that patience to say, this is building slowly over time, and that's how you build a truly beneficial company, is over time, slowly, making sure the foundation is right before going to the next level and that sort of stuff. So I want to run so fast, but I have to remind myself that, like, let me dial it back a bit. Let me ponder it from all angles a little bit, right? So I think patience is the panda, the pig, wherever I need to figure out. But I think those two guys is who I'm trying to get advice from these days.
Yep, and I empathize with that so hard. Man, there's always room for one of those guys. Could always,
Yeah.
I think you could always be a little bit more patient. I shouldn't say always, but generally speaking, one of those guys at least helps me out in situations. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into our last segment here, I just want to thank you again. Uh, I you know, again, we're only 3 years into this long journey here, but I'm like, man, why haven't I connected with you earlier? So happy to be doing it now, and there's so many layers to you, and you have so much knowledge that I'm gonna try to selfishly tap into, but like, man, what an asset to the community, and what you're providing with the Stoicism
Thank you.
spaces, with a space to be vulnerable, to learn, and to have people genuinely better themselves, which is the starting point for everything else in people's lives to work itself out. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being a great ambassador for VeeFriends. And I really look forward to having more conversations with you, uh, both on the record and off. The last segment is micro, macro, Spitfire. So I'm gonna shoot a whole bunch of questions at you. You could
All right.
answer very short answers in the macro, or take your microscope out and articulate and elaborate your answer. So here we are: micro, macro, Spitfire with Brendan Hogle, aka Boggles. Here we go. Favorite teacher you had growing up, and one reason why?
Mr. Coughlin, my English teacher, he taught me that working hard is important, but having fun is more important.
Who is a V friend now that needs to be followed on Twitter?
VeeFriend now that needs to be followed on Twitter. I'm gonna keep going with Max the Miata. I think he's gonna build something truly fantastic with his cartoon because I think he's taking time and being patient. So I also maybe am saying this selfishly because I'm using him as an inspiration to be patient.
You've been over 20 countries. If you could right now hop on a plane and go back to one of them, where would you go right this second?
Oh, no question. Georgia is by far the most impressive country I have been to. The people there are so welcoming, so loving, so generous. It is fantastic. It's a fantastic country. It's just so far away that it's difficult to get to. And it isn't one that has had tourism for, until recently. So doesn't have the kind of infrastructure necessarily. But a very close number two, and they kind of bounce back and forth for me, is Croatia. I cannot tell people enough about Croatia. In fact, I kind of want to stop telling people because I think it's getting too popular. But it is another one where the people are so fantastic. And that is really what it comes down to. At the end of the day, we've been talking about it throughout this conversation, but people are what really matter. And yes, you can go to Paris and see the Eiffel Tower, Rome and see the Colosseum, and those things are great. Don't get me wrong. But it's when you go to countries where people truly, truly, truly want you there and want to welcome you there and are excited that you want to be involved in their culture, that's when you have the most fun. We spent so much time in Georgia. They give American citizens a 1-year visa just for walking in the door. And
Wow.
we spent so much time there and really had a family that took us in. So we got to really experience the culture and the cuisine and just everything about the country is just super fantastic. And when I'm no longer on a schedule where I have to be in the American time zone, I'll probably be living in Georgia.
Wow. What a recommendation.
Yeah, check it out.
NFTs. Speaking about NFTs, if what brand or artist or influencer, if they dropped a token today at a project, you would jump in immediately?
Actually, I'll go back to I'm going to take it back to a VCon alum, Jesse Itzler. He's another big person for me. I have a thing that I call my imaginary board of directors. So I have these people in my mind that I use as my board. And Gary's one, of course, but Jesse's always been one. And the moment I saw him on as a speaker for VCon 1, I was like, that's where I'm going to be. So I ended up on the first day, on the field day, he was doing some sauna stuff, and I was able to sit down with him in the sauna and have a little chat with him about business. And it was one of my most memorable experiences for VCon probably. Will be talking with Jesse Itzler, and if he does anything in that world, I will be right there.
That's a phenomenal answer. His energy is just unparalleled, and he's on my IG feed all day, and I could listen to his stories about hacking into his jet company all day, a trillion times. It never gets old.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I love it.
Your favorite IP as a kid?
Ooh, it's a toss-up between Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I'm going to go Power Rangers. I was the red Power Ranger far too many times for Halloween.
Amazing. Favorite movie?
Big Daddy, no question. I've seen it 28 times. It's one of the best movies ever made. I don't care what anyone says.
Best concert you've ever been to?
Ooh, God, I've been to a lot. Oh, dang it. I saw the Allman Brothers one of the last times they performed at Wani Fest in Florida. It opened my eyes to festivals, live music, classic rock, and so the Allman Brothers for sure.
If it was illegal to have more than one social media platform, which one would you keep?
Twitter, no question.
What's your favorite piece of VeeFriends physical memorabilia or mementos?
Okay, I've got a story here, so we'll just tell it. The first VCon I went to, I met an older someone there, and he was, we got to talking and stuff, and he was, he's like, hey, and this is when the Perspective Pigeon sweatshirt, that was kind of the first collab I think that VeeFriends did, was with Stable, the stable pigeon or perspective pigeon sweatshirt and the hat thing. And, got to talking to him and he said, look, man, I've got this sweatshirt. I was going to try and sell it, but I'd rather just sell it to you like for cost. So I bought it from him for cost, the perspective pigeon sweatshirt. And I kind of kept it in a bag because I was like, oh, maybe I'll sell this later or whatever. But like eventually I decided, I was like, this guy, he was doing me a solid. I was just like, I'm going to wear this. And when I was going through the experience of my mom passing, I was wearing that sweatshirt a lot in the hospital before she passed, and then afterwards, going to lawyers and banks to deal with her affairs and all that sort of stuff. And those days were by far and away the worst days of my life. But the moments of joy that I had when someone would ask me, what is that sweatshirt? What is going on over here? Why are these two little birds here? And I got to explain to them what VeeFriends was and what Gary's trying to build and the impact that I believe it's going to have on people's lives. Those were the like flashes of joy that I had in those days of misery. Mm-hmm. And then I got to tell Gary this story at VCon year 2. And that was like a full circle moment for me where I'm like, look, and it was in that moment of like explaining this story over and over and over again of what VeeFriends is and seeing people's eyes light up of like, wow, that is really cool. That I started to change my perspective on, the way I viewed my mother's death and the way I got through it. So it really turned me into a soldier. Like I want to spread this, not only the message of VeeFriends, but just the awareness of like, look at these characters. They're fun. And so that perspective pigeon sweatshirt will always be a cherished item of mine forever and ever.
Oh, I sincerely appreciate you sharing that. That is so meta on so many levels. And it just shows the significance of some of this stuff, what it could mean. And it's so layered. Thank you, Brendan.
Absolutely, man.
In all of your travels, are you bougie hotel or hiking and camping in the woods?
Oh, hiking and camping in the woods, no question. But you must throw in some bougie every once in a while. So my wife and I, we just went on a trip. We started in Honduras and came down. So we live in Panama. We started in Honduras and then came down back to Panama. And most of the time we were just in the cheap hostels and all that sort of stuff. But at least once or twice throughout that thing, we said, look, we gotta get the corner penthouse just for a few nights and just and really bougie it up a bit. So I like to balance it. But I do tend to side on the side of grunge because that's where I feel most comfortable.
Yeah, the answer is always both.
Yeah, exactly. And not or, baby.
We know VCon this year is going to be in 2024. Obviously, anything beyond that is not guaranteed. But do you think there's going to be a VCon 2025? And if so, where?
Oh, 1,000,000%. I'm like highly confused by people that think that VCon's going to change or be different. Maybe I'm naive, but we're all still getting tickets. VCon's still happening. Maybe I'm naive, but we'll see. And then where? Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I like to think it's going to be in Toronto just because I feel like they want to do an international one. I think that was like people had that expectation in year 3 that it would be international somewhere. I don't think that it's ready to have to be over in Europe quite yet. So I'm still thinking it's going to remain on that side in Canada. Although Mexico City is another one that I thought might be kind of interesting, but the logistics in Mexico City are a little bit more difficult. So I'm imagining that Canada will be an easier option for them.
I'm with you. Wine, beer, coffee?
Oh, depends on the mood, but I'm gonna say coffee. I do live on a coffee farm in Panama, and I help the owner here sell his coffee. So maybe I'm a bit biased, but yeah, coffee.
Interesting. Paper Hands Pony or the Koala 2025?
Great timing because I was just thinking about this 2 days ago. The Keynote Koala is interesting to me because each one is like drawn differently. So that piques my interest and keeps me coming back to it. So I'm going to go with the Keynote Koala.
That's right. Someone posted that. That never hit me. I saw that in the feed the other day. How they're all different.
Nice.
Would you rather have a 2-hour group dinner with Gary, let's say you and 9 other people, or a 15-minute one-on-one with him?
Group dinner all day.
What in the United States, what V friend needs to be voted into the White House this year in 2024?
One that's not over the age of 70. No. Let's say Kind Warrior. I really like Kind Warrior as a, because again, going back to that kind of juxtaposition sort of thing, because I think of like the 300 warrior that like just casually cuts people's head offs, but yet he's also very kind and giving. And so I think that that's how you can approach life. If you approach things with a base of kindness, but you go at it very viciously, that's how you win.
I love that. Shout out Kind Warrior, the mascot for the VeeFam trivia series on the VeeFam network. If you could ask Gary one question, what would it be?
What is a lesson that you learned from your father about success?
I love it. Brendan, aka Boggles, can't thank you enough for being on. This was a real treat. Like this has been so fun to finally jam and to unpeel the layers that we did. I sincerely appreciate you being here. And like I said, I mean this. I can't wait to stay in touch and hope to see you at VCon.
Absolutely, Rob. No, thank you so much. And thank you so much for what you're doing for the community. I think, similarly to like Jeremy knows back in the day and him kind of being the flag holder of the community, now that he's gone all corporate and sold out on us, I'm glad that people are standing up like you and others, to carry that flag and direct the community and be that person. So thank you so much for bringing these stories to the community. It is incredibly important, because this exactly is the important part. These connections, what we say to each other in meetings like this and how we speak to each other when we're at VCon, those are what's, I don't care what the floor price says. That's the value. That's where this community lives, is here in these conversations, in peeling back the layers, in understanding, the backgrounds of people and how they came to be who they are. And so thank you so much for putting a light on that. And just wouldn't be the same without you, man. So thank you.
I appreciate that. That means a ton. That means a ton, really. Yeah, this has been awesome, guys. If you're listening to this, please plug into the via Stoica Spaces. Follow Boggles. I'll pin everything up, but definitely get connected, tapped in, and yeah, let's take this IRL in this August.
Absolutely, my friend.
All right. Cheers.